If you're overweight, do something about it. Work out how many calories you need to eat a day. Go to a calorie calculator and work out.
Just get ripped. Oh. All right, cool. So let's get started with our Mr. Butterfield stuff. Now, I did forget to do this in the other one. I'm going to do it now. My current stats, about 80% of people who watch don't actually subscribe. So if you do enjoy this, please consider subscribing. It would be fantastic. I'm getting close to 200, which is great. But the real goal is 1,000 because I'd like to get access to all those community tools just so I can post on YouTube instead of shitposting on Twitter all the time. That'd be fantastic. Anyway, let's have a look at Mr. Butterfield and his take on toxic masculinity. Actually, that's not the one I want. We want that one. It's on here. Hello. All right. Mr. Butterfield, tell me what it means to be a man.
And by now, I'm sure you've heard all about toxic masculinity. The idea that being a man or being masculine is inherently bad or toxic.
Whoa. Okay, so here's where we get really quickly into some of the problems we're going to see future in the video going ahead. Now, it's a short video. Luckily, it's not like that 2-hour video that I looked at last time. But in just a few short minutes, Mr. Butterfield is going to double down on this idea that the idea or the criticism of toxic masculinity is inherently a criticism of masculinity, and I don't think that's actually an accurate or a fair representation of toxic masculinity or how it's presented or how men are being critiqued. But we'll let him get into it a little bit more, and we'll start to take that apart.
Children are being taught that in no uncertain terms that being a male, being a boy, is some type of evil gender. And that is hurting people. That is hurting young men. And this is what this particular video is all about.
So there are cases where men, boys, people that do value masculinity are hurt by the way others perceive masculinity. And that's a fair problem. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that there's no problem for men or for boys when it comes to addressing their gender or how they want to express themselves in society. The problem isn't that they want to express themselves in a certain way. I think the problem is going to come out that the problem is actually with how society expects them to interact with society and interact with their own masculinity and what that actually means.
Believe it or not, men are 5 times more likely to die of suicide than women. In the modern era...
So I'm going to link a video, and I'll refer to a video a little bit later because I've watched half of this video just to make sure it was stream appropriate. And there's a really good video from a video SES. A lot of you probably have heard of him, H-Bomber Guy. I only discovered him in the last sort of 6 months. And he has a fantastic video response to this idea of masculinity and what it means to be a man and the problems that they face. For example, this idea that men are 5 times more likely to commit suicide. Well, we actually are just more likely to succeed. So the rate of attempted suicides between male and female genders, women attempt it almost as much as men, and they just aren't successful enough. And there's some ideas that we can unpack from that on why that might be. For example, women might feel they've got better support networks, so when they attempt suicide, it is something that is a little bit more a cry for help because they feel that they've got places that they can go to for help, whereas men, they feel a bit more isolated because of the idea that men have to be stoic, which is an idea that Isaac will support later on, and strong masculine emulations of sort of leadership, and so that they are less likely to go looking for help. And so the issue isn't that men are, sadly committing suicide at a higher rate than women. It's that men are less likely to ask for help, whereas the problems at the base level are potentially the same.
Era, women are much more educated than men. More men are homeless, more men are in prison, more men are the victims of violent crime. Fathers are less likely to get custody of their children over mothers, and the list goes on. Now,
So a lot of that we've just gone through, a lot of that can be sort of pretty quickly assigned to or linked with toxic ideas of masculinity. So, for example, men being more likely to be a victim of a violent crime is because they're probably more likely to actually be involved in a violent crime in the first place. like they're often participants in that crime, and they might be the people that are the victim defending themselves, but that's because that's how it's set up in society. Men are meant to be more physically imposing. Yes, physically on the whole, we might be bigger on average than people that are, assigned female at birth, but like that's a problem with that. That is toxic masculinity. Fathers being less likely to get custody of their children. The issue with that is because men are not seen as nurturers, they're not seen as caregivers, because that's not the part in society that we are assigned to play. So that's a problem. That is toxic masculinity. When the critique of toxic masculinity is brought to some people, such as Isaac Butterfield here, they look at redefining the problem so it's not inherently a problem that men have to deal with. Instead, it's a problem that's being imposed upon them by others, and it's unfair. Where I think the better response to this type of critique, particularly of men, is to accept the critique as something that we all deal with together. So the inverse to the fact that men are more likely to not get custody of their children and women are more likely to get custody of their children is that men have an easier time in ensuring that they have a stable career throughout their lifetime, despite any interruptions through having children. Women are more likely to have to put their careers on pause and to lose lifetime earnings in terms of relative advancement in their career because they stop and stay and they're the caregivers and they look after the kids. So a lot of these problems, they balance themselves out when you look at it versus what impacts are happening across society and not just focused on men, and why do other people outside of those who identify as men feel that has a toxic influence on their lives.
I recently made a video a couple of weeks ago about the problems with modern femininity, and it is only fair that I follow suit
that's fucking
and do it all about
woke
the
as fuck,
other
right?
gender. So ladies and
I'm actually
gentlemen,
kinda curious.
here are the problems with modern
But look at
masculinity.
this. Look at his sign.
But first,
Come on.
this video is brought to you by
Filthy.
Surfshark V.
No.
Video blocking is problem number one. Modern men are weak.
Yes, I actually saw this on Twitter unironically today. I forget what it's called, but it's the strong men make good times make weak men make bad times. It's bullshit.
Aggression of masculinity has only intensified over the past few years, and it is with fear, vitriol.
So this was done in 2020. I think this video is 3 months old. I think at this point it should have been pretty obvious that it's not good times. Like, people are struggling, and arguably people are becoming more resilient to difficult things such as the pandemic and economic instability, because people aren't getting support in a lot of places. So I don't know about this. I think this might be anecdotal assumptions, just because it fits his point of view.
Anger aimed towards men, it's no wonder that they are regressing, particularly when it comes to universities and college campuses
Oh, fuck. Okay, universities and college campuses, the fucking gender studies meme. So, for starters, anger directed towards men, it might be relevant. It might be anger that is, correctly placed. And I think the test of whether someone is strong in their gender expression is whether or not they can actually respond to anger in a way that is beneficial and constructive rather than destructive, which I think we're going to get into some destructive responses.
Worldwide, young men with malleable minds being told by lecturers that being a man is a bad thing.
Bullshit. Okay, I have been to uni multiple times. I know, weird flex, right? I went to uni in 2001 and 2002 don't count because that was Bible college. 2003 and 4, I did a education degree. I didn't finish it. Long story, anyway. And then in 2013 through to 2015, I did a business degree with communications. And 2016, I did my postgrad in policy. Not once was I told being a man was bad. But holy shit, I very much doubt that men are being taught that they're just bad. And if they were, they're more likely to be taught in classes designed for people that are explicitly interested in gender studies. Not to invoke the meme of the gender studies university student. Like, what a bullshit. Come on. Like, fuck me. I want to see video proof. I want to see fucking way more than just like a quick fucking picture to prove that point.
That they should be ashamed of what they cannot control. They are...
I don't think anyone wants men to be ashamed of what they cannot control. I think they want men to be ashamed of what they can control but choose not to. The way they talk about other genders, particularly women, when we're talking about cis het men, the way that they talk to each other, the way that they compete. And this is a problem, right? Like, I can sort of hear it in myself that, you know, someone could take this clip and very quickly go, well, look, you're just shitting all over men. I'm not talking about the experience of being masculine or expressing as a man as a whole. I'm talking about the parts that are problematic, and they might not be the majority of your day. Like, you may not wake up and go, you know what, I'm going to fucking take it to some arsehole and get aggro and make sure he knows where he is, his place compared to me because I'm a big motherfucker. What I think is the criticism is, you know, how we respond to those points of stress, that point of pressure where we sort of react to a, social interaction in a negative way. And that's where the criticisms are coming. They're not coming with, in a lot of cases, I suppose, how you react day to day. Sure, there are some people that are just operate at a baseline level of sexism and misogyny. But let's over-define the problem so his points sound more relevant, because it's an effective way to convince people. And perhaps I'm engaging in it now. Perhaps you engage it with your points of view. And I guess how we deal with this is we really need to get down to the quality and veracity of those arguments. So he's saying it's a complete, absolute denigration of men, that men are evil. I'm saying, well, no, it's a criticism of how men respond in certain circumstances. Usually those circumstances are not a 100% expression of how people live their day-to-day lives. They might be a small part, but they're a very important part with how other people view them. Which one of those is more reasonable?
Are to blame for the things that have happened to women in the past, and only they can stop it, not men as a whole. That individual male, they're being indoctrinated into the belief that they are...
Well, yes, each individual one of us actually needs to take responsible for our part in a group's activity as a whole. But yeah.
A part of an evil cabal known as the patriarchy. Of course, all of that is fucking ridiculous, but if you beat a dog to its...
Yes, it's fucking ridiculous, but it's ridiculous because of how it's been framed. Not because this is actually a fair representation of the criticism that is invoked when people say toxic masculinity.
...knees for its entire life, it will never stand up. And that's what's happening here. Now, when I say that...
It sounds weird to say beat a dog to its knees, because like when a dog's resting on its knees, it's basically lying down, right?
Becoming weak, I don't mean that being an emotional person or being in touch with one's feelings or even being feminine is akin to being weak. In fact, me, the old Butterfield here, you know what I get up to when I'm not screaming at a camera like a fucking idiot?
All right, here we go. He's going to tell us how in touch with his feelings he is, despite being a bloke. Yeah.
I rescue greyhounds. I enjoy my time with my partner. We look after our families. We do all these beautiful things together. And you know what? That may be seen as feminine. And that's fine.
See, this is such a Fisher-Price, my first gender study idea. The idea that looking after greyhounds and, being in a supportive, loving relationship with your partner is feminine. Like, that's toxic masculinity. The idea that it is inherently feminine to do things that are caring or do things that are thoughtful. It just feeds into this narrative that there are certain universal experiences that people have in the way they interact with themselves and others that are separated into genders. And it creates a issue where people who can't feel like they can express emotions they might be feeling naturally, then become frustrated, they become disenfranchised, they become alienated from society that they're in, and negative expressions result from that. I mean, come on, imagine that. Rescuing greyhounds is feminine. Like, fuck.
Fine. Sometimes when I'm in the kitchen cooking dinner and my greyhound Rosie pictured right here, look at that little darling.
Oh, look at her. Greyhounds they always look like they're smiling, don't they? Except for maybe when they're on a racetrack, but when they're rescued and being looked after, they always look like they're smiling.
She comes in and she demands dinner because it's 6:01 and she gets dinner at 6 o'clock, and if she doesn't get it on time, she carries on like a pork chop. You know what I do sometimes? I pick her up by her little feet and she stands up with me because she's quite tall, and we dance.
This is all virtue signaling.
Fucking dance, all right? I am 6'8" with a beard. I could grow a clitoris and still be more of a man than half of the fucking incels out there. It's okay.
What incels? I feel like he's either demonstrating a misunderstanding of internet cultures. Like the people that are like saying toxic masculinity is a problem are not incels. Incels are like the polar opposite. They're the people that are saying that men aren't allowed to be men anymore because women are being empowered to have autonomy over the choices they make in life. Like that kind of speaks maybe to the level of engagement he has had with these ideas. The fact that he mixes up his metaphors, so to speak.
It's okay to be in touch with your feminine side, gentlemen. It's not being weak. You can talk about your feelings, you can talk about your issues. That's not being weak at all. Being weak is something far more horrible. Women do not like...
So he's close there. Like, I'll give him to that. Like, being in touch with your emotional side is not weakness. 100%. Let's go. Come on. Keep that energy, buddy.
Weak men. And those who do are hairy armpitted fools that don't want to be with a man. They want to own.
Whoa.
Far more horrible. Women do not like weak men. And those who do are hairy armpitted fools that don't want to be with a man. They want to own a man.
What the fuck? So we've gone from, I think, something that I agreed with him on to maybe the worst take he's had all video. Hairy armpitted fools that want to own a man. Like, that's ridiculous. I don't even know how to respond to that. Like, that's... What? Nah, all right, come on, expand on that, mate. Justify yourself.
Being a strong, masculine human being doesn't mean you're a horrible piece of shit and mean and rude.
No? You're not going to expand on that?
And you try and staunch people. No. It means you're stoic. It means you...
Stoic. So he's feeding back into it. So he's made this video on the problem with toxic masculinity, or modern masculinity in his video title. And he is doubling down on... To be a man is to be stoic, to be immovable in the face of adversity. That's going back, that's walking back what he said before that I was actually, on board with, and that, expressing your feelings is not feminine. It's something that anyone can do and anyone should do and feel comfortable to do. But now he's going that we need to be stoic. That's contradictory. Come on, mate.
Face adversity head on. It means
adversity.
You look after the ones around you. It means you're a good motherfucker. It means...
Good motherfucker, fine. Look after the ones around you. I get what's intended there. I understand, like, the noble nature of, looking to look after people. But the thing is, often the people around us are adults. They are people that have equal interest in the well-being of the people that they're with. So me and my wife, I'm not here to look after her. She's not here to look after me. We're here to look after each other. Like, it's a collaborative effort to make sure our cat is happy. It's not me looking after her so my cat is happy. Like, it feels like I get some people might look at that and go, well, that's a distinction without a difference. But I think it's really important to acknowledge the agency of others and the shared responsibility we have for well-being in relationships with people. And to put that pressure on the man implicitly, like, look, I'll 100%, he's not evangelical out here saying that the man is the head of the house, but it is the same Puritan basis for that extreme version of masculinity that is, the man is here to look after you.
And this is how I sort of thought about it when I was writing.
God, we're taking a while on this. I thought this would be quick.
The way to be the perfect man is be the man you wish your father was.
Nope.
That, I think, is the best way to look at this. Which moves on
Disagree.
immediately
We don't all
to
have
my
fathers.
next point. Men are scared. Men are scared of being men. There is absolutely nothing wrong with being a man. Nothing. There is something wrong with being a tyrannical asshole who bullies people and is just a piece of shit in general. But that's not being a man. Anyone who tells you that there is something wrong with being masculine is a fucking liar, and they're full of...
See, he keeps reinforcing this false equivalency with people saying there's something wrong with being a man, and the idea that there are aspects of the social construct of what it means to be a man are toxic. Like, you really need to carefully separate these two ideas so that you can actually have a discussion about them without getting triggered by someone criticizing your current gender construct that's been basically forced on all of us, from quite a long tradition in society on what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman.
Absolute shit, and you should never listen to that person ever again. Weakness stems from fear.
Wait for it.
So many men,
I have
young
seen
and old,
where he's going to go with this, and it's pretty fucking hilarious.
Being caught doing something wrong. Now, that does sound like something...
Hey. You should abso-fucking-lutely be afraid of being caught doing something wrong to the point where it disincentivizes you from doing something wrong. Just putting that out there.
Quite scary. And, you may think, hang on, if they're going to do something wrong, then they should be called out for it. But what is defined as wrong now is ridiculous, okay? If you talk to a girl at the office, that's sexual harassment.
No. I talked to a girl at the office last time I was in the office. In fact, I talk to a girl in the office almost every day I go into the office. Multiple girls, in fact. And not one point has it ever been said that I've done something wrong by doing that. Now, if you say, hey, love, nice rack, maybe people are going to take offense to that, and maybe they'd be right to. So, yeah, straw man. Let's keep going.
Ask her out. That's sexual harassment.
So workplaces are weird, right? So in a workplace, you don't actually have the ability to separate yourself from people when you're uncomfortable. So using the workplace as a place where you're going to try and romance people, it's tricky. Now, it's not something that's like, it's wrong. It's ethically and morally wrong. Like, yeah, that's obviously unreasonable. But I am pretty confident that you can actually get a sense for the level of interest that someone has in you before you just say, hey, love, you want dinner? Like, your interaction shouldn't start there. So your interaction should probably start with being a little bit more friendly, cordial, get to know them and, start to build up a sense of whether or not they would actually be receptive to that. And I think there's a way to do that without it actually crossing the line into sexual harassment if you establish at least a certain amount of rapport so that, when you do ask them out, and if they say no, hey, might be a bit uncomfortable, but they're not going to feel like they're in a position of, particularly if there's a power imbalance, particularly if there's a reporting line. I'm not saying manager and staff, but, maybe you're at a higher, senior position, even though they don't report to you, or you've been there longer, or you know more people, or, there's all these factors that go into that. And just to say, oh, it's bullshit if that's called sexual harassment. You can't ask a lady out anymore. You might be a little bit being reactionary there.
If you look at her, that's sexual harassment. Now, there are sexual harassers out
I mean, if you look at her tits, yeah, that's sexual harassment, but anyway.
There that do horrible pieces of shit and things like, when you wolf whistle at a chick out of your fucking ute when you're a tradie, that poor chick, she just wants to fucking walk.
So what's the material difference between that and, to use your very bare example of asking a girl out without actually qualifying any of the circumstances around that. Like, I might look at that as young men and go, yeah, I should be able to ask a girl out. Like, that's fine. Well, the wolf whistle and the asking someone out when you've just met them, they kind of fill the same role. Like, wolf whistling is just one of many ways that men solicit for attention from women that is unwanted, or at least isn't qualified with actually responding to, the appropriate circumstances and having an appropriate level of interaction with that person first. It's, yeah.
even though she's wearing a G-bag, she's fucking walking half the birds out there. My point being, leave
Holy shit. Victim blaming. Fuck. Okay, maybe this was a little bit worse than I thought.
alone. It's a tough one, I get it. But that's what this sort of society has created.
Well, it's not tough. It's not tough.
Men are scared to approach women. Men are scared to do anything that puts them out there as a masculine person. Men are scared to...
Hey. So I'm a... What are they called? Not an incel. Introvert. And I approached my current wife. I say current as if there's going to be another one. I approached my partner to ask her out. It was at her workplace. She was a coffee barista. But it was a result of several months of going and getting coffee there and sharing little jokes, and it was really cute. But we established a rapport with each other to when I did actually ask for her number. It was in a time and a place where she had the right to disengage. Spoiler alert, she didn't, and she gave me some lemon meringue pie, which was quite tasty. And yeah, so there are ways to do it, I think. I think it would be different if I just asked every coffee barista, hey, can I have your number? Like that's a different interaction. That's a different level of respect for other people's comfort and other people's, I guess, right to walk around in society without being harassed. Because that's harassment. Like just asking for numbers because you're playing the numbers game is harassment.
To post shit on Instagram that may make them seem like they're part of the patriarchy. Men are scared. They don't want to be labelled as a sexist or a homophobe.
Don't do sexist things. Don't do homophobic things. Don't do transphobic things.
Their living or their family because of it. They don't want to be called out on social media for things that they don't even really believe.
So don't express those beliefs. I don't know what this has got to do with toxic masculinity.
That's where this fear comes from. Men as a gender are walking on the eggshells of society, waiting for a booby trap to jump out in a gotcha moment.
Does he literally mean a booby trap? Like, was that on purpose? Like I said, this guy's a comedian, so surely he knew what he was doing there. He just sounds very serious. It's a very serious point. Funny.
Fear and previously covered weakness is what is leading more and more men to become things known as incels, involuntary celibates who refuse to have sex because they're scared of women or rejection.
Okay, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about with this stuff. Incels are not choosing to not have sex. The clue is in the title, involuntary celibates. The understanding that an incel has of their position is not about fear. It is about things outside of their control. Now that might that might be expressed in fear. It might actually be that they just have a fear of interaction that creates the circumstances that they then interpret as being, hey, it's a genetic deficiency. But incels, it's a whole nother thing.
Which is just insane. If you get to my age of 27 and you haven't been rejected 1,000 times, you're not trying, mate. The thing about fear is, though, it often manifests itself in an outwards fashion. What I mean by that is that can lead to violence. If you push an animal up against a wall, what does it do? It has no choice but to fight back.
But now we're putting the blame of violence on factors that are outside of a man's control. And what was the most coherent example of that he gave? It was an incel. So it's kind of starting to come off as, hey, they didn't get sex, so they're violent. Which, I mean, that's entitlement. That's masculine entitlement to women's bodies, which is toxic masculinity. Like, it's the thing that we're talking about, the idea that this leads to that. Like, no. The way we respond to negative interactions in society, whether or not they're fair, is completely on us. But hey, that's public figures on YouTube.
See a lot of these incels shooting up places and all that horrible shit. It's because they're scared.
How did we get to incels from toxic masculinity?
There's a lot of reasons they're scared. Maybe they had a horrible childhood.
Incels are created by toxic masculinity.
Not just because masculinity is being attacked. But I bet it's got something to do with it. But more so than the violence, we see men imploding upon themselves, withdrawing to their own minds. They get trapped into this gulag that is their own thoughts.
Gulag.
And they become something known as Peter Pan. They never grow up. They never change.
Here we go.
Change their thoughts, their ideas, or their
Don't grow up.
ideologies. And
They're not boys. They're not men, they're boys.
That 16-year-old boy who is terrified of the world. And that is a big problem.
What's this, Isaac?
Final point.
being a boy there?
Men are fucking that scared that they hide. With weakness and fear infecting men's minds, they withdraw and they see life as too hard. Success is untenable.
Game Boy.
Love is fiction. And responsibility is to be avoided at all costs.
Now you're just
they
describing
hide.
incels.
And hiding isn't living at all.
You've already had
It's the
incels.
sadness, weight issues, and worst of all,
Weight issues.
hatred. Men are hiding so much that it has become very much a woman's world. More
What?
women are going to university than men. They're getting higher paying jobs, and that's a great thing for women.
So let's think about that. Women are going to university more than men. The higher paying jobs, I strong disbelieve on that claim. Like it depends on how you look at. Anyway, fuck that for now. But women are going to university more than men. What other tertiary training exists that might be disproportionately disproportionately have men engage in? Traineeships, electricians, boilermakers, carpenters, painters. Like, you know, in Australia, we've got a blue collar working class that makes a fucking fortune in a lot of places. They're the ones that go out to the mines, they do the fly in, fly out, and they can actually make a fucking killing. So just going and looking at, you know, university attendance is women going to university more than men and going, that's a problem. Well, yeah, it is and it isn't. Maybe more women would go to these other options if they were, you know, felt socially and culturally that it was not something that was going to be used to separate them from, you know, perhaps the gender identity they're comfortable with. This is real surface level stuff, like without actually going in and, you know, fact checking every number. And, you know, part of the point of this is not to do the fact checking and the video essay style. It's to do this sort of conversational, hey, when we're presented with ideas, how do we just sort of respond to them on the fly, and to prevent me from having to do research. But look, I guarantee the research does exist out there that, you know, toxic masculinity is not about university numbers. It's about social interactions. And so this is kind of a red herring to take us off the trail, because this gets into job representation and, you know, the wage gap between men and women. It's so much more complicated than this, mate.
But I think, as most people who watch this channel understand, it shouldn't be about gender. Everyone needs an equal go, regardless if you got a cock or it's the other C word, all right? I'm not allowed to say that anymore on YouTube because they're freaking out. My point being, we are all in agreement here. I think most of us here, we believe that everyone should be given a fair go regardless. That's the Australian attitude. Give everyone a fair go. And this needs to be played up for men more. I don't want to seem like a men's rights activist, because I'm not. I'm just being logical here. Because men right now are being socially castrated.
Fuck.
Their ability to be masculine has been removed. And that is being done by social media and universities and the people around.
Universities. Fuck, he hates
It's a scary
universities.
thing. It's a scary time to be a dude. Let me give you a couple of fucking answers for what you can do immediately.
Oh, holy
Number
shit.
one, sort your fucking body out. If you're overweight, do something. Work out how many calories you need to eat a day. Go to a calorie calculator and then work out
Just get ripped. Oh.
about what 20% less of that is, and then aim for that.
Fuck me.
Download my...
I'm not shitting on, you know, living a healthy lifestyle or anything. There are really good reasons to do that. And being a good man is not a good reason to be in shape. That's just being, you know... I don't think women are less likely to want to get in shape than men because it's healthy.
Lose some weight, look after your body. All right?
Some weight, buddy.
Step 2, education. Educate yourself. Read all.
But unis are bad.
Philosophy. Get some information in that fucking skull. Yeah? Listen to podcasts. Listen to other people and be able to change your thoughts on things when you obtain new information. That is so important. And number 3.
So I actually think it's really irresponsible to say educate yourself and to not qualify how to find good quality educational sources. So the thing that's sticking in my mind, and this is, maybe this is spurious, but based on the other things he's said, it's sort of echo, like I can hear in my ear Jordan Peterson, improve yourself before you can improve society. How can you change society if you can't change yourself? And like other reactionaries like that. And like this video could potentially just be a fucking pipeline. Like that literally concerns me. And like, fuck. So get fit, fatty, and educate yourself, but not through not through formal education, by reading books and podcasts and shit. There are great podcasts out there, don't get me wrong, but still.
Ego. Fuck your ego off. Change the person who you want to be. Don't walk around, don't staunch motherfuckers. You don't need to be a big tough motherfucker anymore. You don't.
But I've got to go to the gym for 5
Enjoy
days.
being around people. If you see someone you don't know, give them a head nod. Say, g'day, mate. Something like that. Ladies and gentlemen, I think if men take these things on board and then finally they change, then the problems with modern masculinity will go by the wayside.
All right, I'm letting you know what I thought right now. So those 3 points, I don't think any of that actually deals with toxic masculinity at all. I think the solution to toxic masculinity is actually feminism. It is recognizing that we as a culture, as a society, all actually have a part to play in terms of social outcomes for everyone. So when we talk about toxic masculinity, almost every single one of those points could be placed on a balancing graph against things that are negatively affecting other people in society, other genders, other types of expression. So when we look at things like, yes, men not getting the custody of their children at the same rate that women get them, well, women aren't getting all the opportunities in the job market because they're considered caregivers. Like those two things actually balance each other out in terms of, hey, both people want to improve that statistic to find some level of equality. So men want to be seen as caregivers more. Women want to be seen as, having a place in the workforce more. If we balance it out, hey, look, feminism just solved that problem for men. If we want to look at things like, hell, the same seesaw fixes the problem with men feeling like they've got more pressure for success, more pressure to provide, and that can potentially lead to lower levels of mental health. That leads into problems like suicidality. Again, if we stop having this pressure for men to be the protectors of their family unit, maybe they won't feel that same level of anxiety, or maybe they'll feel more likely that they will go out and ask for help, and they'll get some better outcomes there. Like, none of this operates in a vacuum. You can't fix toxic masculinity without addressing the fact that it is a direct result of how we treat other genders in the way we choose to express our gender at the moment. We need to change that. And I think the response is not to go, hey, I'm going to be a men's right activist. I know he said he's not, but I mean, these are all MRA talking points. But we solve these problems through feminism. We don't solve these problems through separating these, like our experience, from the experience of women. Yeah, that's that video.